Chained to humiliation for 3 years, she surprised everyone with a touching plea. "Save me." Sarah Thompson stood on the crumbling steps of the old school, clutching her notes, her heart racing violently against the confines of her chest. The smell of old books and chalk dust haunted her, while echoes of laughter from her past students weighed heavily in the air, once vibrant, now suffocated by bitterness and decay. To her left, gossiping neighbors exchanged furtive glances, and she could almost feel their judgments scraping against her skin. 3 years of relentless professional degradation, spiraling dreams, and a looming anxiety over her father's well-being had left her raw and exposed. With each fleeting thought of her past, of inspiring young minds with the wonders of science, a sharp pang of grief settled in her stomach. Could she truly salvage her love for teaching? Or was her worth now tied to the labor of cleaning other people's messes, of serving burnt coffee while her students flourished under better circumstances? It felt like life was taunting her, locking her inside a cage of failure while the world moved on without her. As she listened to the school board bicker over funding cuts, her pulse quickened. Frustration boiled inside her like a volcano threatening to erupt. These discussions felt like they were happening on another planet, abstract and removed from the lives of those who needed help the most. Did no one care about the future generation? She hadn't envisioned herself longing for recognition, but the depth of despair was crippling. Fighting against her fading self-esteem, Sarah dared to imagine standing in front of a classroom again, igniting curiosity in those who were blindly struggling. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Taking a deep breath, Sarah leaned into the tension mounting in the room. A plan unfolded in her mind despite the apprehension knotting her stomach. An after-school science initiative, a way to reach the kids who needed help the most. But as she prepared to voice her idea, the looks of skepticism from wealthier families gripped her tightly. Their smooth faces, devoid of empathy, reflected a cold indifference towards kids from broken homes. Each parental glimmer of dismissal sliced through her, caging her hope deeper within despair. A breakthrough arrived in the form of Maya, a girl whose struggle mirrored her own in so many ways. Working with her ignited a flicker of determination within Sarah, allowing her love for teaching to seep ever closer to the surface. Yet beneath that flicker lay an overwhelming fear. What if she failed again? What if she was meant to be lost in this purgatory of pollution and grime forever, burdened by judgments far heavier than the scrubbing of floors? As the tension escalated, Sarah felt the time approaching for her to speak at the town hall gathering. Heart pounding, throat tightening, she grappled with the looming moment. Facing the crowd, she felt like a ghost drifting between her past and present, lost in the ache of doubt. The satisfaction they had once given her now felt like a distant memory. Would any of them see her struggle, hear her desperate plea for dignity? Would they listen when she begged, "Save me, not for myself, but for these young minds desperate to learn"? Or would her words drown in the contempt that followed her every step? As silence enveloped her, the stakes felt impossibly high. All eyes were locked onto her, waiting, and that silence hung thick. Her dream precariously dangled above the abyss of dismissal, each moment amplifying her internal conflict, leaving the future hanging in uncertain balance. Tension coiled around Sarah as she stood at the microphone, her surroundings fading into a blur. The dim light cast shadows against the stern faces of the school board members, illuminating the doubt in their eyes. Their disinterest melted into an electrifying silence that suffocated her resolve. Yet something flickered within her, an ember refusing to be snuffed out. Her mind raced as she fought to gather her thoughts, scanning the faces of the community members present. Among the adults sat a cluster of students, visibly anxious, their eyes wide with expectation. They were her lifeline, the very reason for her fighting spirit. "This can't be one more failure," she whispered to herself, nudging the ember toward a flame. "Hello, everyone," she finally managed, her voice trembling at first but growing steadier with every word. "I'm Sarah Thompson. For years I've loved teaching science. The words spilled out, fueled by the memories of bright-eyed children thirsting for knowledge. But lately, it seems as if our students, especially those from less fortunate backgrounds, have been overlooked. We can do better. Every syllable bore the weight of her journey. As she spoke, she found herself recalling Maya's face, her quiet determination to learn despite the chaos of her life. That image provided Sarah with momentum, transforming her insecurities into a fortified purpose. I propose an after-school science program, a safe haven where students like Maya can explore their potential and discover a love for learning. A spark ignited behind her eyes, courage swelling within. As she heard the murmurs of skepticism ripple through the crowd, she pressed on. Science isn't merely curriculum, it's creativity and curiosity. It's about dreaming. She felt a shift. Her voice resonated as if it were a part of something larger, an unquenchable quest igniting deep within. But I can't do this alone. I need your support. Imagine how many futures we can shape if we create a space where every child feels valued. The stony expressions around her shifted subtly as she challenged their perceptions. Yet even as their brows creased in thought, fear clawed at her heart. What if they decided again that her dreams were illusory? Moments stretched painfully as she wrestled with her vulnerability, standing stark in front of judgmental eyes. Is this what it felt like to take a stand? Suddenly, a hand shot up in the crowd, Maya's. The girl's voice, small but fierce, cut through the tension. Please support her. This is important. The bravery echoed off the walls, amplifying Sarah's resolve. A wave of sympathy flooded the audience. She could almost see it written on their faces, the tentative understanding dawning. Naming the fearlessness in Maya was transformative for Sarah. It reflected how intertwined their aspirations were, one's future sparking the flame of another. Perhaps that bond was the key, a shared endeavor not just to survive but to reclaim their identities. But in a moment, doubts crashed over her. What if her proposal was naive? What if the reality of the world was too solid to bend? As the crowd murmured amongst themselves, Sarah bit her lip, lingering in that suspenseful moment where hope and fear collided. She took a deep breath, grounding herself in a reminiscence of classrooms filled with laughter. This was about standing up to the doubts that held her hostage, even if it meant risking humiliation once more. To protect our future, we need to believe in these kids, she called, her voice steady now, echoing with newfound strength. But just as she thought she'd crossed a threshold of understanding, she caught sight of a familiar face in the back, a presence that darkened her resolve. The school principal, Mr. Larson, whose disapproval weighed heavier than anticipated, had entered the room. The moment arrived to confront her fears again. Just who would win this battle? The courage to fight for her students or the nagging remnants of her own inadequacies? As Mr. Larson's gaze locked onto hers, Sarah felt everything she'd been fighting for coalescing into a singular moment of truth. Sarah's heart hammered in her chest as Mr. Larson's expression remained inscrutable. His presence loomed large, an embodiment of the bureaucratic weight she had battled against for so long. No longer a distant figure of authority, he was now an immediate threat to her plea. She felt exposed under his scrutiny, the warmth of courage she had summoned beginning to flicker like a fragile flame in the wind. "Ms. Thompson," he finally stated, his tone flat and rehearsed. "I hope you understand the complexities that come with any new initiative. Resources are limited, and we need to focus on programs that demonstrate clear results." His words hung heavy in the air. It felt like a gauge, a measure not just of her proposal, but of her worth as an educator. How many times had she heard him dismiss the ideas of younger teachers in meetings? Those memories pounded in her mind, a haunting echo that urged her to back down, to abandon the hope that had been her guiding light. But in that moment of wavering resolve, she saw Maya again, her tenacity, her fierce desire to learn. "It's not just about results," Sarah asserted, the conviction in her voice rising like an unexpected tide. "It's about transformation. We aren't just shaping grades, we're nurturing futures." The room shifted. Students shifted in their seats, leaning forward. There was an undeniable array of hope reflected in their eyes, a shared camaraderie that wasn't lost on the board members. Yet the calm that had begun to settle in her heart was quickly replaced by the tightening grip of anxiety. Could she really stand her ground against Mr. Larson, who wielded power born of indifference? Curriculum does not operate in a vacuum, Mr. Larson, she pressed, emboldened by the resonance of her own words. Just last week, I saw Maya helping a classmate with a science project. You cannot measure the potential of a child by numbers on a test sheet. They have stories, dreams, needs that aren't met. Sarah's voice trembled at the edges, but it remained unfaltering, fueled by the embers of courage rekindled from the memories of those silent voices she fought to amplify. She could feel the frowning faces among the board members beginning to soften, but then Mr. Larson quickened his pace to interject again. Your heart is in the right place, but without proper funding and administrative support, this program will flounder. The dread within her lurched at his dismissal. She stared into his eyes, searching for a hint of compassion, and in that metered gaze, she considered the possible futility of her struggle. But despair quickly turned to determination. She wouldn't let their dreams remain murky shadows lost to bureaucracy. I refuse to believe we can't find ways to support our kids, Sarah countered firmly, her voice unwavering. You see limitations, I see possibilities. What if we partnered with local businesses, science clubs, universities? We can work together, a network of hope. Sounding more like idealism than actual plans, Mr. Larson pinned her down, his voice cold. Frustration coursed through her veins, challenging her focus and resolve. Beneath the authority of his words lay a deeper wound, one that always haunted her every day as a teacher. Had she been foolish to dream of change in the face of adversity? The harsh whispers of doubt crept in again. Yet, through that whirlwind of emotions, she noticed the tentative nods of approval from the students, their energy igniting something new within her. They were looking to her for strength, to challenge their narratives. In that moment, it struck her that confronting Mr. Larson transcended her. It was about becoming the representative of those muted voices. With a deep breath, Sarah resolved to change her approach. Instead of focusing solely on the logistical barriers that they had erected, she would connect their cause to the emotional core that united them all. We should not fear failure, she said, her voice steadying as clarity washed over her. We should embrace it, learn from it. Together we can show what dedication can do, even without immediate results. The silence that followed was electric, shifting something in the room. Awakening her own sense of agency, Sarah could feel the tide of the battle turning. In that critical second, she realized the most profound change was not merely about the program anymore. It was about daring those in power to see the heart of educational reform through the eyes of the future. And just as she prepared to press on, hoping to harness that energy, the principal's mouth tightened, and she anticipated his impending rebuttal. Time's up, Ms. Thompson. A spark ignited in Sarah. The stakes had never been clearer, and the confrontation with Mr. Larson loomed even larger than before. What new strategy would she unveil now? How far was she willing to go to protect her students? The moment hung in the air, both charged and suffocating. Sarah's mind raced as she absorbed the implications of her threat to push back against the hardened bureaucracy. The board's members, who had initially been skeptical, watched with a mix of anticipation and discomfort. Mr. Larson shifted, his expression tightening, signaling the turbulent notion that she had broken through the veneer of indifference. Miss Thompson, I appreciate your passion, he retorted smoothly, but the underlying tension was palpable. But passion doesn't translate to action without structure. His words dripped with condescension, and a flicker of anger rose within her. Did he dismiss her because she was young? Did he judge her because she was a woman fighting against a system that had marginalized so many? The thought ignited an ember of defiance. No, you're right, she countered, her voice strong. But passion fuels structure. It's the lifeblood of innovation in education. Don't you understand that? The question hung there, defying the authority he wielded. If we don't let them dream, give them space to explore, we may as well place a ceiling over their heads. The air seemed to thicken again, positive energy pulsing from the students urging her to rally. Sarah caught sight of Maya. Those wide, uncertain eyes mirrored her hope. With newfound clarity, she pressed on. I want to create a program where my students can experiment, learn from failure, and ultimately grow stronger. Isn't that what we want for our children? Her heart raced, and a sense of purpose flooded her veins. This wasn't merely about a program anymore. It was about redefining the nature of education itself. The memories of other teachers failing to advocate for their dreams loomed large, along with the fear of adding to that chorus of silence. But something deep inside told her that this was where she needed to plant her feet firmly. "Simplistic and naive," Mr. Larson shot back, the thin veneer of his authority cracking. "With such lofty ideas, how do you plan to appease the standards, the state mandates?" "I don't just want to appease the standards. I want to break them apart and reshape them. Future generations deserve more than rote memorization. They should engage, innovate, and create," she blurted, shaking her head vehemently. "What's the point of meeting standards if we're not preparing our students for the real world?" In that moment, Sarah realized she wasn't just advocating for her students. She was reclaiming her authority as an educator. She understood the system's constraints better than they knew, but she also comprehended the indomitable spirit nurtured within the walls of her classroom. Why should those be considered an insurmountable challenge? Transformation doesn't come from fear, she continued sharper now, but from courage, from standing up and refusing to accept the status quo without question. If you care about these students half as much as you claim, wouldn't you want them to rise above the average? To become leaders instead of followers? Mr. Larson hesitated, the edge of doubt flickering across his stoic face. The board members exchanged glances, and for the first time, differences in opinion became visible as they weighed the emotional gravity of her words against the limitations they had previously accepted as unchangeable. Sarah felt the energy shift, the tide of the charge widening, but the reality of institutional inertia loomed threateningly. Would they be willing to take the risk to support a radical idea born from conviction? "Ms. Thompson," Mr. Larson said slowly, a hint of irritation rising, "you're not addressing the fundamental issue of fiscal responsibility here." His words dripped with the cold rationality that had governed their discussions up to this point. "Fundamental issues change when we challenge them," she stated defiantly. "What if we made small changes first, gather data to demonstrate success, and watch those funds grow?" She laid out her mantra of baby steps, quick wins that could galvanize support. Her heart pounded loudly in her chest as she awaited his response, each passing second stretching like an eternity. Yet, as Mr. Larson opened his mouth again, something sparked in the back of Sarah's mind. A new realization, deeper than just the immediate confrontation. Perhaps her battle was with a past version of herself, the one who feared speaking out, the one who questioned her value in the face of systemic oppression. "Mr. Larson," she said thoughtfully, her demeanor softening yet retaining firmness, "let's create a scenario where even the bureaucratic red tape won't be able to contain our vision. Picture the change we could implement together. Can you imagine it?" But the moment of synergy was fragile, teetering on the abyss of history. Could she sway him? Could she bring about the change that mattered? Before she could contemplate further, the board began to murmur softly among themselves. Their reactions were unpredictable, but laden with implication. What would come of this confrontation? Would her willingness to challenge the boundaries of bureaucracy catch fire among her superiors, or would it extinguish in the face of cold practicality? As she stood rooted in that pivotal moment, she sensed the shifting tides that could redefine her future as an educator. If Mr. Larson refused the possibility of transformation, what dire path lay ahead for her ambition? A heartbeat quickened as she steadied herself for what would unfold next. The future hung in the balance, both hers and the students who had entrusted her with their voices. The boardroom's silence seemed to echo against the stark walls, amplifying Sarah's racing thoughts. She had dared to step into the fray, challenging the edicts that had long suffocated educators and students alike. Now every tense second felt like a trial. The stakes were high, and uncertainty clawed at her confidence. As the murmurs grew, she seized the moment. "It starts with dialogue," she pressed, voice steady. "Real conversations about what our students truly need. Perhaps, for once, we can cast aside the spreadsheets and actually listen." Her words hit harder than intended, revealing a wrenching vulnerability beneath her resolve. The rush of honesty cut through her previous defiance, exposing how deeply she cared, not just for the program, but for the lives that hung in the balance. Mr. Larson's brow furrowed as he processed the shift in her tone. Perhaps he was grappling with a new perspective, one forced by the audacity of her approach. Sarah leaned into that flicker of hope, feeling a persuasive energy emanating from her audience. Imagine what we could achieve if we rewrote the narrative. Small community projects leading to major changes. Student-led initiatives that ignite their curiosity and creativity. We can collect data, evolve the program incrementally. Fiscal responsibility can be our ally, rather than our enemy. Her ideas flowed from a place of conviction. She could feel passion coursing through her veins as she painted vivid pictures of what was possible. But the fear of inadequacy wormed its way back into her mind. Was she really equipped to take the helm of such a revolutionary change? The self-doubt surfaced like a tide, but she quickly grabbed hold of her emotions. Experience had taught her that confronting fear was the key to survival. She had done it before in her classroom. Now she had to lead an entire board through similar waters. "Miss Thompson," Mr. Larson interrupted, his probing gaze pinned on her. "Your enthusiasm is admirable, but how do you anticipate securing the buy-in we need from the faculty and parents? Change can evoke resistance." It was a valid concern, and Sarah felt the weight of it. Her instinct urged her to lean on her community, to galvanize support. But could she truly mobilize them effectively against such entrenched opposition? The challenge loomed large, but this time it ignited a fire within her. "I have built relationships with my students and their families. They trust me. I can foster discussions that matter, about their hopes, their struggles. By redirecting our focus toward their aspirations, we can unify our efforts. Transparency and patience will build trust with those resistant to change." As she spoke, a realization crystallized. She had harnessed something powerful in collaboration, a hidden strength she hadn't recognized before. Previously, she'd tiptoed around authority, reluctant to shake the cage, but here she was, emerging as a true advocate, channeling her desperation into strength. Seeing Mr. Larson and the board in a different light, she knew it was time to pivot. Instead of seeking permission or validation from them, she could harness momentum. "Let's start small, test our ideas, and construct a framework that allows educators to innovate," she suggested, attempting to sidestep the confines of their approval. "Who knows? Once we can show tangible results, we may even inspire the legacy value of this institution." A ripple of intrigue passed through the room. Members exchanged glances, their intellectual defenses beginning to falter. Sarah took a calculated breath, basking in the possibilities she had opened. But just as she began to feel a sense of triumph, a thought interrupted her reverie. What if this idealism was naive? Could she truly rally support and implement genuine change within an institution resistant to transformation? "Your vision is compelling, Ms. Thompson," one board member finally spoke, though the skepticism lingered. But without a solid plan, her heart sank. Suddenly the intensity of the moment crashed around her. Would her battle be reduced to mere dreams? Did she have the resolve to weather the storm ahead? Gazing around the room, Sarah felt that raging ember reignite. With renewed fervor, she prepared to address these doubts head-on, driven by a conviction that change was within reach. Perhaps the power to reshape the future didn't lie outside herself, but rather in confronting her own limitations, fears, and ambitions. As the board meeting continued, a new challenge emerged. Would she have the courage to lead her colleagues into the chaos of innovation? Or had she underestimated the entrenched power structures that sought to stifle her dream? In that charged atmosphere, she sensed the potential for a reckoning, one that could define her path as an educator forever. The battle, however, had only just begun. The discussions continued, but Sarah felt as though she were wrestling with shadows. Each hesitant response from the board members darkened the atmosphere, making her feel heavy. The weight of their skepticism pressed down on her soul. But within that gloom, a flicker of purpose ignited. She resolved to turn their doubt into her fuel, a catalyst for action. Her mind raced, strategizing how to transform her thoughts into a cohesive plan that would illustrate both her vision and the stepping stones to achieve it. She reframed her earlier intentions. Not only did she desire change, but she needed to present an executable plan that would appeal to their logic. Education, after all, wasn't about just ideals. It was rooted in practicality. Drawing on her experience as a teacher, she considered the lessons learned in her classroom. How often had she encouraged her students to break down complex problems into manageable tasks? Each innovative project in her lessons had begun with a brainstorming session, dissecting what the students wanted to learn and how they could achieve it. It urged her to find that same clarity now. Let's consider a pilot program, she proposed, utilizing her newfound determination to anchor her suggestions with practical steps. We could select one grade or one subject area where the needs are most acute, implementing small-scale changes and tracking those outcomes closely. This will provide us with necessary data and insights into what frameworks work best before a broader rollout. There was a moment's pause as the members contemplated her suggestion, and she could feel her heart hammering in her chest. Would they dismiss this idea as simply another pipe dream? Or could her strategy earn their respect? As an educator, I've seen firsthand how changes resonate with students, breathing life into curriculum. If we can deliver measurable results within that pilot, we can build a case for further changes. Her conviction sharpened as she continued, her voice rising. And I will personally facilitate discussions with faculty and parents to ensure transparency and nurture their engagement. This was where she could thrive. Real dialogue was her weapon. Sarah had always felt her voice could carry weight in the classroom. Now it was time to elevate her impact beyond those walls. Could she channel the same principles of respect and engagement she championed with her students to enkindle trust among the stakeholders? Around the table, the energy shifted subtly. No longer were they simply passive observers. Curiosity flickered across their faces as they leaned forward. Moments of silence stretched, but she could sense their contemplation was shifting toward acceptance. Yet doubt loomed just off stage, as tangible as the walls enclosing them. Would her ambition hold up to reality? What if the pilot fails? It was that same skeptical board member who had questioned her vision. What's your backup if this fails to pan out? The institution can't afford to constantly shuffle when new ideas flop. His question stung, but it was also an opportunity. Sarah contemplated her next move. The fear of failure had held her back for too long, yet she had witnessed risk bring forth redemption countless times in her career. She could not yield to it now. Failure is merely a stepping stone, she replied, grounding herself with certainty. I want to instill a culture of resilience within our institution, one where we learn from setbacks and innovate responsively. If we create a fail-safe environment where staff feel empowered to take risks, both students and educators will thrive. This will engender a sense of ownership, ultimately transforming how we educate. In that moment, clarity surged through her. Sarah realized she wasn't merely advocating for innovation, she was embodying it. The storm of self-doubt that had shadowed her earlier began to recede, replaced by a burgeoning confidence that surged with every word spoken. Still, the board members exchanged uneasy glances. Some were nodding, while others remained skeptical. Her heart pounded with trepidation, igniting a fresh wave of questions. Could she sustain this momentum? Would she be capable of nurturing and fostering this culture of resilience she sought to establish? Suddenly, the remnants of her earlier doubts returned, clawing at the edges of her conviction. What if she was trapped within her vision, blind to the real obstacles ahead? All right, Ms. Thompson, Mr. Larson finally spoke, his tone a mix of caution and intrigue. Let's say we proceed with this pilot. Who will oversee the logistics? How will we ensure staff is properly prepared to transition into this new model? The weight of his question ballooned before her. She had to think fast. Leadership required not just bold ideas, but a practical approach for execution. Would she falter in the face of logistics, trapped within her plan, or would she forge ahead, ready to confront the implications head-on? Sarah felt urgency surge through her. Would she collapse under scrutiny, or rise to the challenge? I will take the lead, and I'll assemble a team of dedicated teachers. Together, we'll navigate the logistics, ensuring our colleagues feel supported instead of overwhelmed. As she spoke, an empowering realization dawned upon her. This was not just a personal leap into leadership, it was a collective journey that could reshape the institution's heart. But as she stood there, their eyes fixed on her, she sensed uncertainty still loomed at the fringes. Will they trust me? Echoed in her mind, shadowed by the knowledge that her path could still crumble beneath her. But the finality of that thought catalyzed her determination. The real question remained, could Sarah truly embody the leader she aspired to be, confronting both her own fears and the institution's legacies while navigating the complexities of change? Tension crackled in the air as she prepared to seize the challenge before her, wondering if it was truly possible to redefine their educational journey, or if she was venturing into a storm meant to unravel her resolve. The next morning, Sarah sat at her desk, grappling with the enormity of what she had committed to. Her mind spun with apprehension. Would the team she envisioned rally behind her? Each tick of the clock punctuated her spiraling thoughts. What if they saw her ambition as mere bravado? Her resolve felt fragile, teetering on the edge of doubt, and she knew she needed to ground herself. She began drafting an outline of her proposal for the pilot program, infusing it with details to assuage the board's concerns. It was imperative that she provided clarity, defining roles, logistics, and measures of success. This was her chance to demonstrate strategic thinking, a quality she had often admired in her colleagues but seldom recognized in herself. As she sketched out her vision, she recalled the countless classroom discussions where she had asked her students for input and the rich tapestry of ideas they had woven together. Now she needed to emulate that collaborative spirit with her colleagues. They were not just stakeholders, they were potential allies. Why had she never thought to draw upon their strengths before? With renewed determination, she composed an email to her fellow teachers, inviting them to a brainstorming session. She framed it as an opportunity for collaboration, emphasizing that their insights would be invaluable in crafting a successful pilot program. As she hit send, exhilaration coursed through her veins. Inviting their input was a step toward fostering a sense of ownership, both for them and for the initiative. The meeting day arrived, and as Sarah prepared, the air buzzed with anxiety. Would they embrace her vision, or would doubt stifle the conversation before it even began? The meeting room filled with familiar faces, yet they appeared notably cautious. She sensed the weight of unvoiced concerns. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice steady despite her internal turmoil. "I am here, not just to present an idea, but to invite you into a collaborative process that defines how we move forward together." As she laid out the potential pilot program, she watched their reactions closely. Some nodded thoughtfully, while others crossed their arms defensively. Fragments of her earlier self-doubt lurked in the corners of her mind, whispering fears she had fought to bury. But she pressed on relentlessly, reiterating that their collective experiences were critical to success. One teacher raised a hand, a look of skepticism on her face. "What makes you think this will work when so many initiatives have fallen flat?" Sarah recognized the weight of that question, the voice of unfulfilled hopes. "You're absolutely right. Past attempts have taught us valuable lessons about what doesn't work. But it's that very experience we can use to create a structure that focuses on our students' needs." She steadied her breath, focusing on the shared goal instead of her rising anxiety. "The key is learning to adapt. I want us to build a scaffolding around this initiative that allows us to learn, pivot, and grow." The discussion continued, shifting from skepticism to a kind of cautious optimism. Ideas flowed, some practical, some ambitious, and Sarah felt the momentum building. Each contribution from her colleagues added strength to her earlier claims, enriching the project with diverse perspectives, leaving her feeling buoyed. This wasn't just her vision, it was becoming theirs. As the meeting drew to a close, a lingering heaviness settled over her heart. She had successfully galvanized support, but she sensed an underlying tension still present. Can we trust that the changes will serve every student, and not just a few? One voice echoed that question resonantly. Sarah felt the gravity in that inquiry. The truth was, it wouldn't be easy. Could they actually create an environment that served every individual, especially with the preset frameworks that had historically defined their institution? "Trust must be earned, and accountability will be key," she replied, her voice calmer than she felt. "We will create feedback mechanisms, ensuring that every voice remains heard. Our aim is to build not only a robust framework, but a resilient culture where everyone's contributions matter." Sparking this engagement kindled a connection in her, a burgeoning sense of purpose. But as she left the meeting, the spotlight of responsibility lingered. Would she be able to keep that momentum alive? Could she guide this initiative through the storms of bureaucracy and resistance? Her thoughts danced on the edge of determination and fear. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty. Would the shadows of the past re-emerge to torment her, or could she lead them into uncharted territories of success? As she closed her office door behind her, a pulse of adrenaline coursed through her veins. In that moment, Sarah realized that she was not just shaping the future of her institution, but illuminating her own course. The next day would unveil whether the seeds of collaboration she had sown would take root, or if they'd be swept away in the tide of resistance. The question hung palpably in the air. How far was she prepared to go in battling the ingrained obstacles, and would she navigate the complexities that lay ahead? The following morning, Sarah awoke with a sense of urgency pulsating through her veins. The looming challenge of transforming her proposal into a reality weighed heavily on her shoulders. She had ignited a spark in her colleagues during the meeting, but could she sustain that energy amidst the inevitable pushback? Her determination to cultivate trust and accountability felt noble, yet equally daunting. As she sat at her desk, familiar landmarks of her surroundings served as a grounding force. The worn-out mug that bore her favorite motivational quote reminded her of the power of perseverance. Today, she would need to embody that very sentiment, turn it into action, and face the growing doubts that threatened to creep back in. With a deep breath, she began crafting a plan for the follow-up session, meticulously outlining the next steps they would need to take as a team. She envisioned tangible outcomes, not just the abstract ideals of collaboration and feedback. Each bullet point represented not only logistical planning, but a commitment to accountability, an avenue to ensure that the voices she promised to amplify would be genuinely heard. As she prepared the agenda, an email notification flashed across her screen. It was from one of her colleagues, a seasoned veteran named Mark, who had a reputation for being critical. Instinctively, Sarah's heart sank. Would he play the role of ally or opponent? The subject line read, "Thoughts on the proposal." Tentatively, she opened the message. His words were frank but constructive. He acknowledged her efforts while detailing several concerns he had regarding the feasibility of their ideas. Each point struck a chord. She recognized numerous vulnerabilities in her plan. As she read, a wave of embarrassment washed over her. Here was a voice of experience, urging her to confront potential gaps in her vision. How could she lift this initiative if it was still so fundamentally unrefined? Instead of retreating into shame, something shifted within her. She realized this feedback could be a pivotal moment, not only for the project, but for her growth as a leader. Seeking clarity, she crafted a thoughtful response, inviting Mark to participate in the upcoming session, together addressing these concerns in a transparent format. Her heartbeat quickened at the thought. Could she actively invite scrutiny and trust the process? The day of the follow-up meeting arrived, and as Sarah stepped into the room, she felt the pang of anticipation mixed with the remnants of her fear. Much of the apprehension from before persisted, yet this time she clung to the clarity gained from her exchanges. "Thank you all for being here again," she began, focusing on Mark and offering a slight nod of acknowledgement. "Today, I want to tackle the concerns head-on. Your insights matter in shaping this proposal into something that we can believe in collectively." She felt an adrenaline rush surge through her, the realization that vulnerability could fuel progress. As they delved into the discussions, Sarah made notes furiously, acknowledging every critique and incorporating potential adjustments. In this moment, she wasn't merely defending her vision, she was honing it. When a wave of questions came from Mark yet again, she found herself responding differently than she had in the past. "That's a valid concern," she said, her voice firm. "Let's work through it together." What surprised her most was the transformation taking place among her colleagues. The tension shifted from doubt to shared exploration, discussions blossoming around possibilities rather than obstacles. Each person began to voice their perspectives, contributing to a dynamic that felt less like an obligation and more like a shared mission. Somewhere along the way, Sarah discovered her own rhythm. Her anxiety transformed into a sense of exhilaration as they iterated on their ideas. It was a dance of intellect, a melding of experience and ambition. Forgotten pieces of herself were being reassembled. Yet, as the meeting drew to a close, Sarah felt a sudden swell of apprehension once again. Despite the breakthroughs, could they keep this collaborative spirit alive as execution approached? The room erupted into more discussions and affirmative exchanges, but deep down, she sensed the turbulence waiting behind the curtain of success. She couldn't shake the feeling that trusting her team was intimately interwoven with her ability to trust herself, and that still felt precarious. Stepping back from the din, Sarah shaped an unbidden thought into resolve. What if I am not the only one who needs to earn trust? The realization loomed over her like a question mark, unraveling knots of self-doubt but also threading through deeper complexities. As she left the meeting, ready to confront her own expectations, she wondered just how far her evolution would carry her. Would the alliance she nurtured withstand the tests ahead, or would the strains of their past inhibit their future? An undeniable tension gripped her heart as she envisioned the storm on the horizon, wondering if their unity could withstand the inevitable chaos rising to challenge them. The next step pressed forward with the relentless question: what would it take to ensure their commitment was not just momentary, but enduring? The next day brought a rain-soaked morning, mirroring the unease that clung to Sarah as she navigated through her tasks. Despite the previous day's progress, the specter of doubt hovered in her mind. Every decision felt like stepping into a fog. Clarity seemed elusive. The meeting had ignited a collaborative spirit, yet the thought of sustaining such momentum was daunting. As she settled into her workspace, Sarah opened her laptop, greeted by a blank screen that felt heavier than usual. It was as if each keystroke awaited her command to breathe life into the project. The fear of failing to deliver weighed on her, but a flicker of the previous day's excitement beckoned her forward. She paused, reflecting on the depths of her commitment. What did she truly want from this endeavor? It wasn't just about the proposal, it was about establishing a foundation of trust, not only among her team but within herself. It was in that moment of contemplation that an idea took root. This time, she wouldn't just seek input. She would nurture a culture of accountability where everyone embraced both their strengths and vulnerabilities. With renewed determination, Sarah decided to implement a system of peer reviews before presenting their final proposal. The plan was simple but profound. Every team member would review one another's contributions, fostering an environment of transparency. She envisioned a space where feedback wasn't met with defensiveness, but welcomed as a tool for growth. After crafting an outline for the process, she forwarded the initiative to her team, including the rationale behind it. As she hit send, a wave of anxiety washed over her. Would they embrace this new structure, or would it be met with resistance? Just an hour later, Mark responded, his tone unexpectedly supportive. I think this is a brilliant idea, Sarah. Inviting each other to reflect on our work can only strengthen the proposal. I'd be happy to help you guide the team through this process. The compliment struck a chord deep within her, a reminder that collaboration could lead to breakthroughs she hadn't dared to imagine. With encouraging feedback echoing in her ears, she rallied her team for an impromptu session to discuss the new approach. As they gathered, Sarah felt the atmosphere shift. Colleagues arrived with enthusiasm, willing to engage with the changes she proposed. They shared laughter and confidence, and for the first time, Sarah felt she was not steering a ship alone. They were all navigating the waters together. Let's brainstorm what aspects of our work could use more eyes on them, she encouraged, a palpable energy filling the room as ideas flowed freely. Sarah facilitated the discussion, steering them toward the most critical areas, and with each suggestion, her confidence grew. It was contagious. They were collectively reframing the narrative, moving from uncertainty to empowerment. Yet, amidst this exhilaration, Sarah sensed an undercurrent of hesitation within herself. Could she truly cultivate this sense of openness and vulnerability? The tighter she clung to the notion of creating a safe space, the more she felt the burden of keeping it intact. Doubts whispered that her own insecurities could unravel it all. As the session wrapped up, Sarah caught Mark's eye. He flashed a reassuring smile, almost as if he could sense her internal conflict. It ignited something within her, a flicker of hope that she wasn't alone in this journey. But as the meeting adjourned, a question loomed over her like a shadow. What if her fears became a barrier between her and her team? After dispersing, Sarah sat at her desk, staring at a wall adorned with a collage of past accolades. It felt exhausting to maintain a facade of strength when her vulnerability was so prevalent. If she wanted to build an atmosphere of trust, she would have to open up as well, wouldn't she? Yet facing the unknown was daunting. What if exposing her fears compromised the progress they'd made? The dichotomy between her ambition to lead authentically and the fear of vulnerability clenched her heart tightly. The tension of that choice echoed in her mind as dusk crept in. As Sarah left the office for the day, a sudden realization struck her. Taking the leap herself might be the true test of faith she had been evading. Would she unshackle her hesitations and dare to speak her truth? Or would she remain tethered by the chains of self-doubt? As she stepped out into the night, the city lights twinkling like stars in the distance, Sarah grappled with the weight of her decision. The next day, she would have to confront her unspoken fears head-on. Would she find the courage to reveal her vulnerabilities and forge an even deeper connection with her team? Or would that revelation be a risk too great to bear? The following morning, Sarah stood before the mirror, summoning the courage she would need for the day ahead. The reflection that greeted her was a mixture of determination and apprehension. Today was not just another day of meetings. Today would mark a pivotal shift in her leadership journey. She resolved that she would speak openly about her struggles. As she arrived at school, an unexpected calm washed over her. She organized her materials, the familiar scent of books and fresh paper grounding her amidst the tumult of her thoughts. Today's session would be different. She would invite her colleagues to share their fears and challenges alongside her, creating a truly collaborative environment. When the group gathered, Sarah felt an electric energy zinging in the air. The tension in the room was palpable, a mix of nerves and excitement. Taking a deep breath, she opened the floor. I want to create a space where we can all be honest, not just about our ideas for the pilot program, but also about our vulnerabilities. I want to share something personal about my journey, and I hope you will all join me. Her colleagues shifted in their seats, curiosity mingling with their skepticism. A knot tightened in her stomach, but she pressed on. Over the years, I've faced criticism and self-doubt, questioning my worth as an educator. I feared that embarking on this initiative would reveal my inadequacies, but I realize now that confronting these fears is what makes us stronger and more resilient. As she spoke, she could feel the weight of her honesty hanging in the air, creating a shift among the group. Some colleagues exchanged glances, recognizing a shared struggle in their own experiences. Mark raised his hand, an ever-present support. You're not alone, Sarah. We've all felt that weight, especially in a systemic environment that tends to marginalize new ideas. I admire your willingness to lead us into these uncharted waters. His words, resonating with warmth, ignited a wave of agreement around the table. Opening the discussion, Sarah guided everyone in sharing their own challenges. One by one, teachers articulated their fears of inadequacy and failure. As more voices joined in, a remarkable transformation unfolded. Vulnerability became a collective strength, knitting the fabric of their collaboration even tighter. The discussions quickly shifted into a brainstorming session about practical measures to implement their pilot program, each teacher building off one another's contributions with newfound enthusiasm. The earlier spirit of skepticism was replaced with collaboration as each member of the team strove to shape the vision together, empowered by their collective honesty. As the session progressed, Sarah began to reconcile with her earlier fears. They had ignited an authentic bond among the team, creating an atmosphere where risks weren't just accepted but encouraged. By daring to unveil her vulnerabilities, she had fostered a culture where others felt safe to do the same. Amid the laughter and shared insights, she sensed her internal struggle beginning to ebb. It was as if she had unlocked a new level of leadership, one that embraced honesty and connection. By the end of the session, they had laid out a robust framework for the pilot program, each member knowing they were not stepping into the unknown alone. Sarah stood at the center of this transformation, not as a solitary leader, but as a catalyst for change, embodying the very values she had pursued. As she left the meeting room, a sense of pride welled up within her. This collaboration was not just hers, it belonged to everyone at the table, breathing life into their shared vision. And as the excitement of the day settled, Sarah realized that she had conquered not only her self-doubt, but had also cemented her place as an advocate for her colleagues and, more importantly, for her students. The recognition that followed was profound. Other faculty members approached her in the days to come, reflecting on the energy of their sessions, praising her initiative and leadership. The school board began to notice the grassroots movement that Sarah had inspired, commending her for fostering a culture of collaboration and genuine connection within a historically stagnant bureaucracy. In the weeks that unfolded, the pilot program took shape, integrating community partnerships and student input in ways that felt both sustainable and empowering. Sarah's vision blossomed into a tide of transformative energy, reshaping the educational landscape in ways that transcended mere curriculum enhancements. As she celebrated these milestones, Sarah found herself not just validating her position, but solidifying her identity within the educational community. Gone were the shackles of humiliation that once bound her. Now she stood tall, possessing the confidence to challenge norms and ignite change. Reflecting on her journey, Sarah Thompson emerged not just as a dedicated educator, but a resilient leader willing to embrace authenticity for the sake of innovation. She had proven to herself that true transformation begins with vulnerability, and that courage is about the willingness to rise, together, in pursuit of a brighter future for the students they served. With a heart full of gratitude and a renewed sense of purpose, Sarah Thompson stepped toward the horizon, ready to navigate the ever-evolving challenges ahead with strength, empathy, and an unwavering commitment to education. You need to subscribe now to witness more transformative journeys like Sarah's. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this empowering conclusion. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and spread hope. Comment below your reactions and theories about Sarah's inspiring journey. You won't want to miss the next exclusive emotional stories.